Good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chair of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. Please note that members of the committee may be using tablets or laptops to view the agenda. Housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. And when you are invited to speak, please ensure that your microphone is on so that you can be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you're so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. So, before we go through our agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. I'll introduce the members, and if I can invite the officers to introduce themselves. We have some officers also joining us online. It would be great if you can also introduce yourselves when I come to you so we can ensure that we can hear you. That would be great. Thank you so much. So, to my right, I have Councillors Gohill, Smallwood and Batt. To my left is Rindell, Democratic Services Officer. Then Councillors Sweeting, Garg and Sansapuri, and Mr Little, our co-opted member. Alex.
Good evening. I'm Alex Coleman. I'm Director of Children's Safeguarding and Care.
Good evening. My name is Helen Smith. I'm the Head of Service, Children's Social Care Transformation Lead.
Laura Baldry, School Placement and Admissions Manager.
James Rogers, School Place Planning Officer.
Steve Muldoon, Corporate Director of Finance.
Matt Davis, Director of Strategic and Operational Finance.
Great, thank you. Julie, do you want to kick off?
Julie Kelly, Corporate Director of Children's Services. Abby?
Hi, Abby Preston, Director of Education and SEND.
Jane Cawthon, Director of Children's Social Care.
Catherine?
Catherine Angelini, Assistant Director for Education.
Donna?
Donna Hugh, Assistant Director for Care Provision Services.
Louisa?
Louisa Hanson, Head of Finance for Children and SEND.
Great, thank you so much everybody, and a warm welcome and a Happy New Year to you all. Okay, agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Ryan.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Gill and we have Councillor Sansapuri substituting.
Okay, thank you Councillor Sansapuri for subbing this evening. Item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Are there any? No? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sweeting.
I'm a non-pecuniary interest in the St Martin's issue because I'm a governor at St Martin's. I know I didn't need to declare that, but I have.
That's fine, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
A non-pecuniary interest as a governor of Whiteheath Infant School.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting on the 13th of November. Are they agreed? Okay, great, thank you. And thank you to Ryan for providing the notes for our witness sessions as well. Thank you so much. Item 4, to confirm that the items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public and the items marked as Part 2 will be considered in private. There are no Part 2 items, so we go straight to item 5, which is the budget and spending reports. Julie, is this to you? Right.
You'll see this evening that I'm joined by my other Corporate Director from Finance, Steve. So I plan to go through, not in great detail because there's not much change, the month 7 report that usually comes here. Then Steve would like to address the committee in terms of the wider financial position and budget setting, and then I'll pick up again in terms of our proposed budget for next year for consultation. So that's okay with the committee. The budget and spending report for month 7, you will see that it's not much difference from month 6, which I think is positive. We are still showing the pressure on the general fund of just under £6 million. That's not changed. Positively in the DSG, we have had a positive movement of 1.9 million. That was not entirely unexpected, but we couldn't report on that yet until the phase transfer work had been done and we understood what the impact of a range of changes and mechanisms would make on the bottom line. And I just want to bring your attention to the savings because you will see there's still 273,000, which is shown as amber at risk. We have since month 7 had our registration for the 6 children's homes that these savings are predicated upon. So that will move. You'll see movement in months where we've got much greater confidence. That's really the only differences in the report than last month, but if the committee have any questions, we can take them now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, thank you very much. As at Mum 7, there's still this £6 million of pressure on the budget for our service area, which although has not shifted, it's still there. So how is this being addressed? Because I don't see this £6 million appearing in the agenda item 6. Is it being paid for in the bid for exceptional financial support from central government, or is it coming from the funding, the additional funding via the fair funding settlement that government has announced for Hillingdon?
Do you want me to answer first?
Do you want to? Sorry, Judy. Do you want to just? Yeah. Do you want to just take the first comment, which was about what's been done to address that, and then I'll pick up on the funding.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. It has been addressed in the next paper, and you'll see that in the growth bid, so that we're rebasing and ensuring that we have the budget set appropriately for the year ahead. And that's been based on our data analysis, particularly in the pressures that was highlighted around placement costs and the increase in section 17. If I hand over to Steve, he'll probably talk a bit more about the range of funding mechanisms to cover that.
So the thing to note from the overspend this year is that will need to be covered by EFS as a total for the council, and then in next year in the budget, the budget is not in balance. I will cover that in a short intro in the next item, but the council requires EFS for next year to balance the budget. It's not a specific item by item request for EFS. It's the overall overspend position.
Do you have a follow-up?
And the thorny issue of the DSG, I realise that some progress is being made, and well done to all officers that have been dealing with that, but it is still an overspend and it is still a deficit. And it would appear that there's going to be issues related to what central government are going to do about this. But is there actually a fallback that we need to look at? Because it may be that there's still going to be a deficit. And because we have not used, or suggesting we're not using any of the exceptional financial support for any deficit that there may still be, will there be an issue that we might need to go back again to central government to say, yes, you're giving us this, you're addressing this issue for SEND, but you're still leaving Hillingdon with a deficit, and so we need to go back to government to ask for additional exceptional financial support. Is that possibly on the horizon?
You'll probably be aware that there will be further announcements on the treatment and how the government plans to address this in the coming weeks. We're not quite sure when, whether that's going to be at the time of the final settlement. Hopefully it will be, but it's not totally clear. They haven't advised yet how the period up to or the balance and the deficit as at March 28th will be handled. We wait advice on that and clarity from them on that, and we'll need to respond accordingly as to kind of what the decision is. If that were to be left with councils, then there's a question of how they will allow us to account for that and treat that, and whether that then does become a question of EFS at that time, because certainly we do not have the reserves to cover that. So there is that as a risk, but that's obviously a risk without knowledge of what their plans are and how they advise us to do that. There will be many other councils up and down the country in the same position as Hillingdon, and some of them I think will have much higher deficits to deal with than even we have. So it's a national issue that needs to be addressed appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gohill.
Thanks, Chair.
So I think it's quite clear in the report that it said most of the pressure that that we're kind of facing is based on high care costs rather than demand. But I just wanted to unpack that a little bit and hopefully get a bit more information on that. So I just wanted to ask, based on our current placement, it might be one for people on the screen. Based on our current placements, do you think those costs are driven more by the complexity of need of those placements, or by market prices, and how is that shifting how we kind of look at the sort of longer term strategy? Because I imagine these changes will continue to develop over time.
I can come in and answer that. I think it's a bit of both, really, in terms of complexity. We have low numbers of care in Hillingdon, which means that the children who come into care are those who really need to, whose needs can't be met either in their families or in the community. And by that measure, there's a high proportion of those children that do have complex needs. But the market forces and the costs of external placements, and again, it's a national issue, not just a Hillingdon issue, have really driven up the costs exponentially. So we haven't seen a real increase at all in children coming into care. We actually haven't really seen an increase in children that require specialist residential placement. That number has stayed stable, but the cost of that care has risen. When I started here in Hillingdon, it was around £3,000 a week. Was the average cost now hitting almost £8,000 a week as an average cost, and not one of our more high cost ones. And part of the strategy in the care offer and the savings plans was around disrupting the market and creating our own provision to enable us to provide care of the same or better quality, I would argue better quality, for a much lower cost. And our final homes have now been signed off, so hopefully we'll start to see that make an impact over next year, which is where you'll see in the next paper that the savings for the care offer have increased quite substantially from last year. I hope that helps.
Okay, Mr. Little.
Thank you. Two questions, if I may, Chair. One is on the subject of the high needs and the savings that have been made, the 1.9 million. Is it possible to differentiate between how much of that has been achieved by effectively bringing children back to the borough from expensive out-of-borough placements, and how much by reduced funding to the schools within the borough? That's the first question. And the second one is my inability to get around some of your acronyms. There's a saving of 267 in the table for increasing MVF. I'd be grateful to know what MVF is.
Okay.
It's the managed vacancy factor.
Thank you.
So it's
Abby?
Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Little. In response to the point around the high needs, it's really difficult to establish clearly at this point, because where we're at with our savings overall is that some of the savings will come from in-year activity, sort of new activity and new savings, and some of it is cumulative savings that have had an impact from prior year actions. So whilst we monitor and we have data that sort of unpicks what different actions lead to different savings, it's difficult to give a concrete answer because the savings are all cumulative over time. So for example, if you've got a high cost placement in an independent setting that's currently in our modelling to be there for 5 years, and we at place transfer place in a lower cost sort of maintained setting or special school setting, you will see the saving in year, but then the impact of that will continue in future years, if that makes sense. So we do track it, and we have looked at that in detail, but it won't be a conclusive response, if that makes sense, because it's difficult to work out the cumulative position.
Is it possible to give a rough and ready response, if not a perfectly accurate one?
I can certainly look into it and come back to you. I haven't got it to hand right now because our work is quite detailed. So I will go away and look into it and come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sansbury.
Thank you, Chair. added pressure is due to a reduction in the use of flexible capital receipt to fund transformations. What has caused this change of policy?
I'm not entirely sure in your question and who it should be directed to and whether it's within the remit of this committee. So, do you want to either reword the question or maybe retract the question and we can move on? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, then leave it. Then I ask another question. Has the majority of 4.5 million saving for our service area for 2026 has been achieved by using capital transformations rather than actual lower the service cost? If so, how confident can we that the budget for next year, when the further savings are required, can actually be achieved?
Shall I take this one?
I could possibly answer that one. In funds, there was a small amount of capital that was used for project leads, but that was a very small amount for 2 posts. The rest of it is actually savings and reduction. And it's not so much about reducing what was delivered or particularly headcount. There was a small headcount reduction of 7, but we have actually completely changed the makeup of the workforce and our delivery models through the social care delivery model. So this year I'm not making a bid for additional capital funding within the budget. So that for me I don't see it being an issue and being unsustainable. The point around the capital spend and send is we had a really end-to-end recovery programme with safety valves and DSG recovery, then offset improvement that met the criteria for capital spend and transformation. And I'm not saying we're totally transformed because we'll never will be, but that work has been done. We have identified that during that period of time demand has also increased in the way that we work, and that we actually need to invest some money and embed it in the service as well as reducing some of the capital spend. And that was some discussions that I had between myself and Steve, who's in the room around, we can do it for a short period of time, it's got us to where we've got to, and actually it's had a significant financial impact on the DSG, but going forward this needs to be embedded as business as usual, and it's a statutory requirement now of everything that we're doing.
Thank you.
Right, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that, so the use of flexible capital receipts is not a saving in itself and of itself, so it doesn't go towards paying for ongoing long-term business as usual costs. So the use of that flexible capital receipt is to pay for short-term resource to generate transformation, to generate savings, but in and of itself it is not a saving.
Councillor Sweeting.
It's just to clarify the question from Councillor Santapori. It's paragraph 4, which says additional pressure is driven by a reduction in the use of flexible capital receipts to fund transformation costs. So we're basically asking what's changed. So it's actually in the report, paragraph 4.
We have undertaken a review of the use of flexible capital receipts during the year to determine what we think we can afford to pay for from capital receipts, should be paid for from capital receipts. So it was previously covering some expenditure. Because our projections on what capital receipts we could generate in the year was reduced and refined, we then took a look at the spend across the council, not singling any areas out particularly, but then elected which areas of spend would use that capital receipt. So this is spend that is still ongoing, that we have removed that funding element from. Okay.
Councillor Garg.
Sorry, my laptop's decided to do an update, so I can't tell you exactly where, but the the question was around temporary accommodation. I think within the report somewhere it said something about 6 new builds, and then further down somewhere in the report it was saying there was something else. So just wanted clarity or an update on any new initiatives that the council might be using, like HMOs or children's homes and additional capacity.
I think we need to separate them as two different things. The temporary accommodation is just costs that children's services are incurring for families that are homeless with potentially most with no recourse to public funds, that the council doesn't have a duty under housing legislation, but we do have a duty under housing needs legislation, and that's not about building new places. That is around the provision of rent and subsistence and support to enable the family situations to change. The children's homes point is linked to our care offer savings that we had a smaller amount in last year and a greater amount in for the next 2 years, and that's about us building and developing our own children's homes so that we're not relying on the market, which, as I've just explained, is a heavily increased cost. Our 6 children's homes were registered in December, and they are the first multi-registration children's homes that have been registered as yet. So we're working with the DFE, and hopefully that will be an opportunity to help national practice and better care for our children. So they're two separate things, but that's where our pressures are: costs of care and costs of temporary accommodation. There is a range of other things in place for the temporary accommodation, but that's not involving just building more places. That's more about the intervention and enabling families to find their own resources, to support them to find accommodation in other sectors potentially. And there's quite robust oversight panels that look at the work that's been done there.
Okay, great. Do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, so just to clarify, are the 6, are they new builds or are they already?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to add a point that they're new builds, but they are built, they're residential children's homes, they're not temporary accommodation.
Okay.
6 new residential children's homes rather than temporary accommodation.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this agenda item? No, thank you. So we're just noting this agenda item, and we move on then to item 6. Just a reminder to members to make sure that we keep our questions focused on the remit of this select committee, please. Is it Steve? Am I coming to you first? Great.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to set some context, the wider financial context, because that obviously frames the proposals that you're being asked to consider this evening. I did a longer introduction at last night's Resources Committee, so people can go online and watch that if they wish. But just to summarise, so we published our MTFS strategy just before Christmas, reflecting a very challenging environment for local government generally, as well as for Hillingdon. And for us, that's really driven by the rising demand, market pressures in social care and placements, and inflationary cost growth that's been outpacing standard CPI inflation, for which we may get funding. So you will also know that the government has acknowledged the need for fairer funding. That was announced just before Christmas. That acknowledges that Hillingdon has been underfunded for a number of years. So we do get a benefit from that additional funding coming through. That will, however, be phased in over 3 years rather than arriving in full in 1 year in 26-27. At the same time, we've got the backdrop of financial reserves being significantly depleted in order to protect our services over recent years. So we're in a situation where there is significant growth required simply to meet the pressures that we face, and you'll see that reflected in the report this evening. There's obviously demanding but necessary savings that we need to make to try and keep as much control on expenditure as possible, but we are unable to balance the budget without exceptional financial support from government in order to balance our budget. So just to be really clear, EFS is not free money. It needs government approval, it needs to be repaid, and it comes at a cost to the council. So last night the Corporate Resources and Infrastructure Select Committee scrutinised the overarching budget. So against that backdrop, the meeting tonight is really to focus on scrutinising the proposals under the remit of this committee, as shown in item 6, and to comment on the assumptions being made, the proposed savings and growth, the risks and deliverability, and the potential service impacts from that. In terms of the process the proposals have gone through, including those in the report this evening, these savings are owned by senior officers across the council. We don't have centrally imposed cross-cutting savings which might get pushed back on or discussed and debated as to where they should be delivered from. They're very specific. They've been through challenge sessions including corporate directors, cabinet members and finance. They're meant to be realistic rather than aspirational, and so we're reflecting the lessons from the previous couple of years and where we have struggled to deliver on savings. But we'll also continue to reflect and work further on some of these proposals. I will be asking certain directorates for some of their savings to deliver more detailed delivery plans, particularly where they're shown to be more difficult to deliver, higher value, higher risk. And obviously through the coming year we will also seek to improve on our demand modelling and savings tracking to make sure that issues are identified and addressed early on if they arise. So the key output from tonight is to agree any feedback and recommendations to Cabinet from this report, which will be considered alongside the consultation responses. We have a 6-week consultation ongoing at the moment until early February. That's before the final budget decisions are made in February, and we've got meetings scheduled for Cabinet on the 19th of February, Council to finally approve the budget on the 26th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Sweeting.
The figures show a very welcome amount of growth of 12.13 million in these figures. Has this all been achieved by the increase in funds allocated to Hillingdon by the Labour government from the revised fair funding allocation of 126 million over 3 years, or is any amount coming from a possible delivery of exceptional finance support from government, which is obviously needed, for without it the Cabinet report of 23rd of December states it will not be possible to balance next year's budget. So basically we welcome the growth very much, but has it all come from the increase in funds, or is some of it going to be from the possible exceptional financial support that we're still waiting the answers for?
Thank you. So I don't think you can specify any particular growth or costs within the council for next year to be either funded from the funding from government or from exceptional financial support. We do not segregate the two.
Okay, Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the report that there's a ceasing send key working is included as a saving proposal. I'm just wondering what service currently sits behind send key working, what replaces it, and how will we ensure that families don't experience reduced support or increased escalation to tribunals and complaints?
One rather than Steve. I think that's probably well. The send key working service, we have worked on that this year, so the service has already ceased. It was a non-statutory service. It was not funded through any of the block funding. It was nice to have, but we can't afford it. We did do a review in terms of impact to that service and felt that although there was some impact, it wasn't great enough to warrant it. So a lot of work has been done. That doesn't mean that little people who need early intervention and have SEND needs won't get any SEND help. We've built that into the social care delivery model and the family help model to ensure, so we're not chunking them up. You get a bit of early help SEND, a bit of early help key working, and there was a bit of duplication in different levels of practice. It was nice to have, but we simply can't afford it, but we will ensure that children continue to be supported. But that work has been done, consultation was done with staff, the process is actually finished. There was a small saving this year from that, but there will be a full year effect next year.
Okay, Councillor Sweeting. Thank you.
As the Cabinet report of December states, and I quote, "It is recognised that weaknesses in previous rounds of budget setting have been an underestimate of growth, leading to a weakness in terms of carry-forward budget shortfalls. So how sure can we be that the budget proposals for next financial year are based on realism?" And I use the word realism because that's actually in the Cabinet report. So are based on realism and not just hope.
Yes, I'll pass to Julie on this.
Steve had outlined the process that we've been through, and I think from my own experience, I've been through the budget setting process. This has been far more rigorous, but actually the service has had far more input across, including everybody on the screen and the officers in the room. We've used our data, our trends analysis, what we know, and we've already had our savings plans in place, so we're not starting from zero. So we sort of understand what we're hoping to deliver, but I don't have a crystal ball. We are a port authority, and there's always a chance that something might go awry somewhere, but I think there's a high level of confidence. I have a high level of confidence. I think the budget managers who are going to be allocated these budgets to deliver would say that given the work that they've been involved in and seen the working out, we feel that it's as realistic as we're ever going to get. And we have asked for the growth that is required, because a council that needs financial support, we could say, oh no, we'll try and, we can't ask for that. We're being absolutely realistic about what we need to deliver our statutory services and get those outcomes. And as Steve said, that has been robustly tested. It's not just been the officer saying, I've had plenty of challenge from colleagues and others. And we've got to this point where I think we are as robust as we can be, but I feel far more confident with this budget because we've done it in a very different way this year. But we will find out as we monitor month to month.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Little.
Thank you. A couple of questions about the growth proposals. One is on the growth of the EHC team. What will the impact of that increased spending be? Where will it be felt? And the second one is on the very modest growth to fund SEND brokerage role to support lowering costs. What will that actually in practice entail?
I will come in. I think Abby, do you want to answer this? Or?
Yeah.
Go on.
Thank you. So the growth of the EHC team is it's already being funded through the capital transformation because of our work on DSG and spend improvement, as Julie referenced. So those roles are already in place or being recruited to. What it has allowed us to do is have an in-house tribunals team, which is much more cost effective and allows us to sort of manage those higher levels of tribunals more effectively. But essentially what it means is that we have now more officers to be able to deal with the cases because caseloads have increased significantly over the years, and this allows us to meet those statutory duties effectively as far as the CND. Regarding the brokerage role, this is a sort of, we've had somebody in post supporting us through agency as part of the transformation before. But this allows us to have a brokerage role to support our commissioning role, and those roles allow us to find appropriate settings for young people, negotiate the best sort of rates, ensure that we have the right support and checks and so on for those placements. So that will be a really positive move moving forward. We've just recruited a permanent officer for that role, which is really positive because we now have a sort of commissioner and broker for Ascend, which is fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Oh. No, Councillor Smallwood, I'll come to you first.
That's desperately kind of you. Thank you, Chair. The budget places a clear emphasis on strengthening local provision for children and young people. I just wondered if also could expand a little bit on how they're going to improve outcomes for families. We think reduce a little bit more on how we're going to reduce the out-of-borough resilience and how that provides better financial stability for the council. And I'd like a little bit to how that is going to be carefully monitored and benchmarked. and how we double check that we are finding the best places, that we are getting the best value for money when we're making these decisions on various provisions that we're providing for young people and their families.
Okay, thank you for that. Sounds like more than one question. To be fair, there's lots of areas in there. We have deliberately, as the committee is aware, really focused on not cutting but changing how we deliver, identifying where the real pain points are, what costs a lot but doesn't add as much value. So we aren't just focusing on being cheap. We don't want to be cheap. We want to be, really good value, and that also includes delivering the good outcomes, not just the lower cost. But we know that we deliver well. We know that we have a good skill set in Borough. We know that we can deliver in-house care provision probably better than most, unless it's super specialist placement elsewhere. So that's been our focus in disrupting the market. So we have that with the care offer. We have our fostering offer that we're very much focused on, and we track everything monthly. How many new carers, where are the settings? Any new placement for a child comes to me. I chair a panel every Tuesday, and he'll come and they talk to me about the needs of the child, the cost of the placement, what it's going to deliver. It's either agreed or not or changed. Following that, it is then monitored on, it's been a fortnightly basis. In the normal world, it should maybe be monthly, but because we have such high challenges, Taz and Louisa, who are also on screen, they should be monitor that every fortnight. They check that the placements that we agree for in HARP are still suitable. They are meeting outcomes of those children, that they are getting us where we need to be. And that's in our care side. We have also got our whole family health transformation along with the Family First Partnership Programme, which I won't steal Helen's thunder, she will talk to you about that. And we've got a partnership executive group that monitors that. So governance across is really robust and strong. So we monitor when we track for the NTFS process around have we made the savings, what have we done? Alongside that, we're saying what is the impact? Are we improving outcomes? And we see them go hand in hand. I'm lucky in my portfolio that better outcomes cost less. That's not always the same everywhere in the world, but in children's services, and even when we look across at our SEND work, what we're seeing isn't huge cuts, and we know that we were on enhanced monitoring for a period of time with a safety valve, because there were some things we wouldn't do as a council. I wouldn't take 15% off everybody, and that's the job solved. So we've spent a lot of time and effort really focusing on making sure that our children are very well looked after, and where possible that they can live and learn and be cared for in Hillingdon, in their communities, with their families. And that's a focus for us. But there's lots of governance around this. There's lots of meetings and oversight and reporting into the centre, and that will continue as we go ahead with our improvement journey. We also have Best Start in Life, which is kicking off. We're about to do a readiness survey, and again, that's a real focus on making sure that our wee people are school ready, which will impact again on their achievements and outcomes, but also on the SEND provision. So there is a lot in that space behind the numbers. With activity, and then we have Ofsted and HMIT, and they're all due back again this year. So again, that's an external test and mirror for us as to whether we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we are making a difference for our young people.
Chair, I wondered if I could expand a little bit that and look at sort of, if it was a sandwich, either end of the sandwich. I mentioned this last night when I subbed on the Corporate Infrastructure Select Committee. I'd like to understand the relationship, professional relationship between Julie and Steve, and how Steve is working with Julie to make sure that that work is done. And we've heard a little bit about that this evening, but I'd like to understand how some of the step-fast changes, and if possible, maybe not from all of them, I'd like to understand at a director level, through you, Julie, if that's possible, to understand how directors are working with managers and other staff to make sure that they're very steadfast focused on delivering some of the things that Julie's spoken about, not just the cheapest, but something that is value for money that is also quality, because I actually think it needs to be a a whole step-fast change in attitude. Actually, if we can upskill and train people to be better, I'd like to understand, maybe not from the all chair because we haven't got time, but maybe from a couple of the directors, to understand how they are making sure that is monitored within their team at the next, I don't want to call level down because that's an awful way of describing it, but through the chain that we have, or the organogram, the next part down, how are people making sure that we're giving them the skills to be able to do that? Because I'd definitely expect that from a corporate director. I should expect it from a director, but actually the next level down, those are skills you might have to learn. So how are we upskilling people and making sure we're getting that value for money whilst delivering high quality placements for young people and delivering good services for our families? Thank you.
Okay, well, in terms of my relationship with Steve, it's quite new. As you know, that Steve is quite new to the council. Jokes aside, we have really robust challenge sessions, and we've had those. It is hard, I would say, there has to be a high level of trust. Steve can challenge me on the money, but I think it's difficult when you're talking about adults or children's services, where I would say that myself and my other colleagues are the subject matter experts. So Steve has to rely on trust in that space as well. But every month we are reporting in centrally, which is going to finance for scrutiny, which is going to Steve. He's bringing it to CMT and the corporate management table every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. We are going through the numbers, we're going through the impacts, we're going through the what next. And it's challenge, but high challenge and high support, because the corporate management team were joint and severally responsible for delivering it all, not just for children. So, new, feels robust, feels strong, and feels very transparent for us. But I think if we move on to some of the directors, they can talk maybe a bit to your question around what they're doing and what they're thinking.
I'm happy to come in if that helps. So from our area, what I would say is we have a really strong vision and strategy, which I hope the committee has sort of seen evidence of as we've gone through different areas that we talk to. One of the things that's really strong, I'd say, particularly around SEND, but also education and the broader children's services, is that everyone's really clear on where we're going and what we're doing and why. And I think when we created the strategy and we got together our thoughts around a kind of vision, and this isn't just our teams, it's also a partnership, because with SEND in particular, it's broader than just the council. Everyone sort of played into it and gave feedback and helped shape that vision. And I think the good thing is that the team are really clear on what we're doing and why. So certainly, talking for myself as far as obviously SEND being a big part of this because of the sort of high cost nature and the need to improve outcomes, I'd say the team are really clear because they really care passionately about doing the right thing, and that's the same for all of our staff. But they don't feel that they're doing something because they need to save money and they need to cut costs and cut provision. They're very clear that we need to look at things differently and be creative and make sure that we support children and give them the resources that they need and the provision, but we need to do so in a financially efficient manner. So we've done a lot of work on that, and I'd say it's very well embedded within my services and across children's services, because again, SEND, it does include social care and other partners. But we monitor our outcomes very closely. As soon as we sort of see dips and things, we follow up, we talk to the team, we understand why, and we try to ensure that we improve that. So I feel confident that the team are really clear on that and are really part of that vision and believe in it. And I think that's where they're doing such incredible work in making us more financially efficient whilst making sure that we don't compromise on what we deliver for our young people.
I don't mind coming in next. Just going on from Abby, I think Abby's covered in regards to the vision, and I think the vision is all over children's services. And I think for some of the things that Abby's mentioned, I'm not going to repeat because I think that they're transparent within our service areas as well. But we have a strong governance. We have high challenge, but there's high trust as well. We have autonomy to make those decisions, and I do believe that that really helps with improving that vision and progressing that vision. within the service, children are at the centre of everything that people do. When you're speaking to workers, and as Julie said, Julie does the Tuesdays Harp, you do high cost, you do panels, you can really see the passion that comes from there, but they are also being very creative. Clearly they understand the pressures of the local authority, but they don't make decisions based on just finances. We balance the pros and cons, and it is actually best value, but what's the best outcome for those young people? I think that the fact that we've got stable numbers within our children that are in care will tell you that we have got the right service around. We've got the right service around people, right service around, and we have fortnightly communication, for example. We have the whole service. There's about 600 people on that fortnightly communication where we communicate regularly in terms of, you know, what the challenges are, what the highs are, what the lows are. We also look at celebrating achievements, but also we don't underestimate those, you know, the challenges that we have within the local authority, within children's services. But it is also about how we work with our enablers, where we have really good relationships across our state. Some need a little bit more working, but I don't feel that anybody is opposed to working together. So I think that the council vision is at a strategic level shared and understood. As directors, I will say, I'd go the other step, because you did talk about the step under Julie. As directors, we're very transparent. We have DMT. So Julie mentioned CMT, we have DMT, we have weekly DMT, and following that I have weekly SMT, and I know that my colleagues do also have weekly meetings and fortnightly meetings as well, to ensure that communication filters down and making sure that every avenue is covered within that. I do think we've got a really strong leadership, and I do think that there are challenges, but there is an optimistic workforce and a strong workforce, and you have a workforce who is really wanting and committed to delivering that change. I think that's what I can say about children's social care, but children's services as a whole.
That's great. Alex, did you want to add something?
I'm not quite sure what was left for me to say, because obviously it was very comprehensively covered by colleagues, but I think it's very clear that throughout all of it is, you know, this model of having a challenge and trust comes across. And I do think that we find solutions together, we celebrate achievements together, and we work pretty well together. And I'm pretty sure that if you speak to anyone in children's services, assistant director, service manager, head of service, everybody will be fully aware of the challenges we're facing. Everyone will be fully aware of what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to achieve it. So I think that consistency of approach and that cascading of all that information, it's present throughout all our services. So pretty confident with the leadership we have in place, pretty confident with the working relationship we have together, because we don't always agree, and I think that's very healthy, and we challenge one another, and we challenge each other's assumptions all the time. So all that put together leads to a very cohesive and very well informed and well analysed decision making. And that's where I think we are at the moment. Quite reassured, quite a good place to be.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Councillor Sweeting.
I know we're getting towards the thoughts about our comments to Cabinet, and I know we could make quite a few comments, but are we going to include something about being mindful that this budget is unlike any other that we've considered in the past? There are unanswered questions. There are unanswered questions about the exceptional financial support, unanswered questions about what we're going to be at the end of the financial year on the deficit. So the comments need to be general, I can understand that, but I think we need to be mindful that we're being asked to make comments on a budget which is by no means certain, although a tremendous amount of work has been done by our officers, and I think I would like to congratulate them, because it must have been a tremendously busy few months, and it's continuing to be a very busy few months. So can we be mindful about these unanswered questions when we make our comments, please?
Okay, that's noted, Councillor Sweeting, thank you. And on that note, so what we'll do in terms of delegating comments to the Democratic Services Officer in conjunction with myself, the Chair, and with yourself, Councillor Sweeting, as the Opposition Lead. Do we have any other questions or comments? Can we bring this item to a close? Thank you so much. Okay, great. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Matt. You're free to go. Agenda item 7 then takes us to the biannual performance report. So I understand that, is that Helen? No, Alex, Julie, sorry. Just getting my bearings.
Okay, the biannual performance report. You did have the annual one last month, so it does feel a bit of a repeat. And there was a request for some changes, particularly to the NEAT data. We have not been able to get that in there yet. We just didn't have the time between that and the digital and the intelligence capacity, but it will be in the next meeting. There is no real change in the report. I think I'm hoping Catherine has got the not known data that she was desperately trying to get to her digital colleagues but couldn't do it in time. There's lots of performance reports that get out. The budget report, there's 1 week less in December, but she would be happy to share that. So I think I would rather just go straight to questions and comments on it and some clarification, because data often just creates more questions than it gives us answers, and hopefully we'll have some of them.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Julie. So the first question that I have then is on page 37 of the report, talking about youth justice. I just wanted clarification on this point. The sentence says, often children commit a subsequent offence before being directed to youth justice services, where Hillingdon's Youth Justice Service can then intervene and successfully reduce the rate and number of offences. I just wanted some clarification as to what that actually means, and does it mean early intervention, or does it mean that we're intervening after the offence has been taken place? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, when we track reoffending, it only tracks from a child that has already been found guilty of an offence, so it's not early intervention as such. But you'll see that we've got very low first-time entrants, which is good, so very low children being found guilty of offences, because we've got a lot of early intervention work going on. Because we have a low number, the percentage who reoffend can skew quite significantly. So if you've got 3 kids, then if one of them reoffends, then that's your 30% done. But what we have found, because the Youth Justice Partnership Board did a deep dive into this, the reoffending rate, because we track it over 12 months and 18 months, and what we see is, although we have a high reoffending rate, once the child's offended, been referred to us and we get involved, the number of offences greatly reduce and we benchmark quite well. So it is a bit of a conundrum. So the idea is, over the last year or so, is really get using Engage and the various other programmes, was getting into the custody suites so that we can get these young people before they're actually charged with an offence, so that we can bring the reoffending down. But we won't see that data come through until 18 months after we start the work, because there's a lag on it. But I think we understand what's happening and why. And usually it's a very small group of children that are reoffending that need more targeted and focused support.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Julie. Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chair. And can I firstly say well done to Julie and the whole team. I mean, there's a lot of good news in here that maybe hasn't been explicitly stated out loud, but a lot of good news in this report. 4th lowest net expenditure, and I'm pretty sure it would have been lower as well if we didn't have Heathrow in the borough. So, despite Heathrow, 4th lowest expenditure in London, a good CQC rating, there's the 8th lowest expenditure of London boroughs for the Housing General Fund and homelessness expenditure. There's a lot of good news here, and we can clearly see that a lot of hard work is done to make sure we're at the highest standard possible. I just had a quick question around, and my laptop screen doesn't show the page numbers, but it's within the report. It's the table with the that says children, families, education, children, social care, demand, and safeguarding. It's one of the red, yellow, and green bits. In Hillingdon, there's 2 bits that were yellow, and that was referrals and re-registrations for CPP. I was just wondering what plans or actions we might have in mind to try and move those into a green, and also how far off we are making it a green colour, if that makes sense as a question, because we don't what we can kind of see is what we can't really see is like how far we really need to go. You can see Redbridge underneath is 505 under referrals, and they're green. So is it a case that we're close to it? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to try and explain it further.
When a family hits a stressful situation and risk increases. So it is nuanced and complex, but we are setting up our new multi-agency child protection teams, again as part of the new programme. We are hoping again that will have a greater impact and oversight. I'm not particularly worried about the re-registration outcomes. I would rather that we provide additional support than try and keep the numbers low. But obviously we would like to empower as many families as possible that they don't need to come back. I think Alex is trying to come in because some of this sits in his portfolio around the oversight.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Just very, very briefly, just on the child protection re-registration. I mean, if you look at the number of open CPP, because this is the percentage increase, percentage of re-registration, we have a very low number of child protection plans because we are trying to prevent child protection. There's a lot what we're doing to prevent getting to that point. And because of that low number of child protection, any re-registration, especially when you add into the mix a family with many children, statistically that becomes quite significant. So if we had a higher number of child protection plans and the same number would be coming back, the percentage would be quite lower. And because we're quite good at keeping numbers low, then any re-registration will impact more significantly in percentage-wise. Because if we look at actual figures, then that's slightly different.
Okay. So can I just quickly add then to Alex's point? We are fifth lowest and we are in green in terms of open CPP plans. So child protection plans, sorry. So if you look at that data and then look at the re-registration, that will make more sense and might really help with understanding it. So we are quite low.
Great, thanks, Taz. Councillor Sweeting.
Well, first of all, can I say that it's a very comprehensive, well-constructed report, so thank the officers for that. It's very much based as well on looking at costs, and sometimes it may be missing a little bit on outcomes. I was interested that at the meeting, the Select Committee meeting last night, there was a comment made that sometimes low costs do have a negative impact, and they were talking about training being reduced, etc. So have any of the low costs that we are looking at and saying well done, have they had any negative impacts? Because it seems to me, looking at the new initiatives that are coming for next year's budget, some of them are saying to support statutory requirements, etc. So have we not got the capacity? We are maybe doing very well on limited money, but have we not? Is it necessary to have that extra capacity for next year to ensure that we do have officer capacity? Because there's been once or twice when we've asked officers to provide some information and we've been sort of advised that there just wasn't officer capacity to do it. So really, the question I'm asking is, sometimes low expenditure does have its implications. Have there been, on our service area, any implications on having a low expenditure?
Thank you, Councillor Sweeten, for that. I think, as said earlier, I'm one of the probably luckier corporate directors that when services are good, it costs less. But that's not to deny that we have a very tight financial envelope. We've had the discussion when Steve was in the room about the financial position of the council, and we have to make decisions about what is nice to have and not. So we have staff focusing on the things, not particularly on the things that save the money, but the things that will demonstrate good outcomes for children. We will have our regulators back, but they were in for the JTI, and I have it will come out in next week, I think, of the overall thematic report, where they have asked to include some of the good examples of good outcomes and practice that they found in Hillingdon. So I signed that off today. It will be embargoed and you'll get the detail at the end of the month. So we are not seeing a negative impact on the outcomes for children. We do have some concern and a risk around our Families First Partnership programme that Helen's going to talk to you about, but mainly because we're in the middle of whole-scale change. So we have change across social care, we have got change coming in SEND, and we have got the Best Start in Life change in practice, that there's a risk in transformation and change that we drop the ball somewhere. So we're just trying to make sure that our governance is right, our tracking is right, and we're putting in the mitigators. But in children's high-cost children's services across the council, across the country, are not services that are good or better. They tend to be services that are inadequate or requires improvement.
The early years net expenditure graph shows that in Hillingdon it's much lower than the London average. Is there a reason for that?
Asta, do you have that in front of you?
Sorry?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can speak to it, that's all right. So it is slightly lower because we've been doing a lot of work in our early years expansion project as well as our wraparound project, which has been slightly delayed compared to some other boroughs, which is why the expenditure is slightly lower. But you will probably see a difference in that in the next year because that's really accelerated in the last 6 months since the early years portfolio transferred over to us in education.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? No, thank you. So we needed to note and provide comments for council. So again, I'd like to delegate comments to myself and Councillor Sweeting and Ryan. Agreed? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to agenda item 8 then, Family First Partnership reforms. This one's for Helen. Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll just run through the highlights of my report, given it's previously been circulated. It's fair to say that these reforms are significant, and the most significant that certainly I've seen in my 17-year career as a social worker. We're working really closely with our DFE colleagues, but also with our strategic partners with health, education, police and voluntary sector. From a governance perspective, we've got a executive transformation group which provides oversight, monitoring of progress and ensures accountability across all the strands of the programme from our senior leaders across those agencies. We completed a detailed delivery plan which we submitted to the Department for Education, and we meet with them quarterly. So we continue to get feedback from themselves and also work alongside our other local authorities and are being supported by the London Innovation and Improvement Alliance through our journey, the journey that each local authority across England is going through. In order to start this piece of work, there was significant consultation and engagement that took part in Q1 with staff and with practitioners. And that piece of work has now been concluded, and we're in the delivery and the transformation phase. We're really lucky that we've been able to utilise some of the grant funding for the DFE to increase capacity in respect of engagement and participation. So we've recruited 2 part-time participation officers with lived experience who will be leading on co-production, particularly with our parents as well, and ensuring that the lived experience and the expertise that we have from our children and families that we work with very much embeds the change as we move forward. We've also created a data analyst apprenticeship role. The Family First Partnership reforms have required additional data requirements, so in order to meet that need, we've created an additional post, which again is going to be ring-fenced to one of our care experienced young people to really reinforce our commitment to as our responsibilities as corporate parents. From a delivery perspective, our Family Help Service went live on the 27th of August, which feels like a million years ago, and that was the launch of our locality-based Family Help Service. So we integrated our early help key workers with our social workers across first response and children's social work team to create 11 single locality-based teams. And those localities are aligned to our family hubs and children's centres to enable those services to be provided in a geographical area and responsive to those community needs. We've seen an increase of a workforce of our alternative qualified key workers, and also because of the consultation and changes in the service delivery, additional service managers have provided additional leadership, quality assurance to really kind of monitor outcomes for children and young people across that new family help service. And we continue to support training, skill development for our staff across that service. I mentioned a parents consultation group. We're in the middle of developing that to ensure that the changes are really being embedded by the lived experience. We created a new beginnings team that went live at the end of November. At this moment in time, so sort of 6 weeks later, we're supporting currently 11 families. It says 8 in the report, but we're now at 11 families subsequent to the report being written, with really good relationships, particularly with our midwifery colleagues. And we've already worked with one family, opened them, supported them, directed them to other support services and closed them down, so potentially preventing that child coming into further services within Hillingdon. We're really excited about that service. We're really excited, particularly because it's quite a small team, but the financial implications of actually preventing children and young people becoming looked after have got the potential to save us money. But equally, the trauma of children coming back into care and parents experiencing that, is really important. And we've got a care experienced young person that's supporting and volunteering with that team as well, which is really positive. The Department for Education is particularly interested in the work that we're doing with New Beginnings. It was one of the things that showed particular interest at our last quarterly meeting back in December. As Julie made reference to earlier, we are developing a multi-agency child protection team. We're in the process of developing that. We're in the process of thinking about what that looks like and how decision making is very much shared across our partner agencies. Our Stronger Families Hub has been co-located at the Civic since the 1st of December. So that provides representation from probation, housing, house colleagues, education, police, youth offending, domestic abuse services, education and SEND, so that at that point that child or young person is referred from a school or whoever at the first point, we've got that really good multi-agency thinking, multi-agency signposting and diversion at that point, the right service at the right time for our children and young people. We've recruited 8 lead child protection practitioners, most of whom have been internal staff that have stepped up into that role to provide that expert practitioner to oversee the child protection journey in line with the Family First reforms. We are, I think it's fair to say, ahead of the curve in compared to some of our other local authority colleagues. So we have the 9 pathfinders, there's 2 in London and then 7 across the rest of the country that were supported by the DFE to start this piece of work. But in respect of other local authorities across England implementing it, we are ahead of the curve. We've moved into our family help model, we've recruited our lead child protection practitioners, and a lot of London authorities aren't there yet. So we're really pleased to be able to support and lead in this piece of work. One of the key elements within the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill was around family group decision making and making that mandatory at pre-proceedings stage. Now that's something that we've been doing using a family group conferencing model, and we've been that's been in place within Hillingdon for a number of years through a commissioned provider. We're working on strengthening that offer. We've always made that offer open to other children and families, not just at pre-proceedings. We see the real value and importance of families identifying their own solutions and potentially, when needed, identifying alternative carers for children and young people. But we very much need to do some further work to align those processes with our new family help model and make sure that that workflow is really central to our intervention and planning. As I mentioned before, the Family First Partnership has resulted in additional reporting requirements, and we're doing a lot of work with our digital and intelligence colleagues to develop Power BI dashboards so that our team managers and service managers have that live data available to enable them to be able to support their teams and to support our children and young people. We have the Safeguarding Bill, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, have placed new duties on safeguarding partners to ensure that education and childcare settings are fully involved. We've always worked very effectively with our schools and our education settings, and our education colleagues in Hillingdon, and we continue to do so, recognising that vital role that schools play, particularly in early intervention and intervention. We have school leaders that are contributing at both strategic and operational levels, both in respect of the Safeguarding Partnership and in respect of the Executive Transformation Group as part of this piece of work. I'm going to pass over to Donna in respect of our kinship offer, if that's okay, Donna, just to talk through that piece of development as well.
Sure, thank you, Helen. So in regards to our local kinship offer, we've essentially have now got our steering group in place, and this includes a wide variety of professionals or agencies such as our housing, education colleagues from virtual school, CAMS, our multi-agency psychological service, early help, and also SEND. So what we've done is, now that we've got our steering group in place, what we're trying to do is do a lot of co-production in formulating our local kinship offer, which we're hoping to launch in March of this year. Equally, what we're trying to do is to just make sure that we have a very clear support structure for kinship carers, both financially, housing, education, providing information and advice to our kinship carer. And I think this is as a result of not just the bill, but also feedback we've also received from our kinship team and from our SGO and wider kinship families. I think everyone is feeling very positive about how we're moving forward, and the fact that Hillingdon is reviewing this, and we're reviewing it in regards to the finance support package, which does need reviewing and to be more in line with our current legislative, and also in regards to just minimum standards of what we need to do in providing support to families who do a lot of the work. And I think what we've kind of established or accepted is that without the kinship carers, there would be a lot of stresses on our fostering service and our residential service. So they do play a big part, and we recognise the role that they play in establishing, providing good outcomes for our children. So I think the fact that we are now working with national organisations to bring everything in line and have a good local offer to our families is really something that everyone is looking forward to. So we're hoping to launch all of that by March of 2026 of this year.
Great. Helen, is that it? Should we go to questions? Thank you. Thank you so much for presenting that report, and we can definitely see there's lots of work going on behind the scenes. So thank you to you and all the teams and everyone who's been involved in putting this all together. Councillor Sweeting.
Well, can I say how much I think that this initiative is really an exciting new development. I mean, in the past, we've had some disconnect, let's put it that way, with some of our partners. So, I mean, the simple question, how is it all working with our partners? Is it really a step forward? Because in the past, maybe some time ago, there was that disconnect. So are we now working together, all of these partners, to this initiative?
From a strategic perspective, absolutely. We've got really good buy-in from our police and health colleagues. There are some challenges to that. Obviously, the Met Police is a London-wide. There are 32 local authorities, all of whom might be taking a slightly different approach to how they implement these changes, but they're being very transparent in respect of what they can and can't commit to. Ultimately, the changes don't really change what we do, they kind of change how we do it. So we're not asking for any additional resourcing, for example, from our policing colleagues. It's about how that resource is used and utilised. From an operational perspective, again, I mean, we've always had very good relationships with our partner agencies, our schools in particular, our health colleagues. We continue to see that. We continue, absolutely, we can't support our children without all of those professionals being part of that network. We've had a particular interest in the New Beginnings team, and our health colleagues have been particularly supportive of that development. And there's a lot of conversation about ongoing joint training needs, sharing of experience. So yes, we've got good buy-in.
Great. Mr. Little? I'll come back to you.
Two questions, if I may, again. Firstly, how big a culture change will it be within the council? And the second one is, from the point of view of families, what would be the biggest impact that they experience?
Thank you very much. From an individual social worker's perspective, social workers previously were doing short-term pieces of work and then passing over the long-term work to other colleagues. We've now joined that together. So from a culture perspective, there's a bit of a shift individually around actually, I'm doing a short-term piece of work and then I'm moving over to actually this is a long-term piece of work right from the beginning. And that's really to enable those relationships to be built, for children and families to have fewer points of change in their journey with us. We've had colleagues that have felt that that's been a really different way of working, but now kind of 3 or 4 months down the line, they're really seeing the benefit to that in respect of their relationships with children and families. So it is a culture shift in respect of particularly the family help model. It's a culture shift in respect of how we think about child protection at the front door and that multi-agency child protection team. We're still getting there, particularly with our partner agencies, rather than decision-making being led by the local authority and our partners sort of contributing to that really being shared decision-making. There's further work that we need to do around that, but we've got the right people around the table to have those conversations. So in respect of the impact that it will have on children and young people, strengthening that decision-making at the front door, being able to have the right service working with our children and young people, whether that's our not even coming into the family help service, but being diverted into our family hubs or our youth offer, and we've got a really fantastic youth offer in Hillingdon, means that we can provide the right support to children and families at that point. That shared decision-making at the front door means that actually we're only putting children on child protection plans when we really need to, when that risk is really needed to be managed in that way. Really focusing on the right professionals, maintaining relationships with children and families, means that they have more consistency, trust can be built, and ultimately, we come back to that conversation about money. One of the biggest things that makes a difference to children and families that we work with is the relationships that they have and feeling like they're supported and they're held, and that's really what we want to do. We've got a staff team that are very much behind this, that they see the benefit of this. They're being supported by team managers, by service managers. So I'm really hoping that we'll continue to get really good outcomes for our children and young people. We link in, we have feedback loops from an audit perspective, from our inspection perspective, but directly from our children and young people as well, and now from our parents group. So we can track some of those soft outcomes as well as some of the data outcomes.
Great. Councillor Batt.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Sweeting's question, I was wondering how schools are particularly being engaged as partners in the family help and safeguarding model, and what's being done to ensure consistent participation from them, especially from academies.
Wonderful, thank you. Our schools have always been a real key partner in supporting our children and young people. They're the ones that see our children and young people on a day-to-day basis. There are various forums that are already set up, kind of as business as usual, so the Head Teachers Forum, our Designated Safeguarding Leads Forum. So we're engaging with them, we're making sure communication went out in really good time. We've also got representatives, we've got our secondary school lead and our primary school head teacher lead that is sitting on the Executive Transformation Group, and they're acting as a point of contact to the other schools within Hillingdon.
Can I just add something to that, just to say in terms of educational schools, them as safeguarding partners is not something new introduced by this bill. This has been in place for a couple of years now. So in Hillingdon, our safeguarding arrangements across Hillingdon are monitored to the Safeguarding Children's Board, which is overseen by the Executive Leadership Group. So in Executive Leadership Group and in a Safeguarding Board in Hillingdon, we have had representatives from education, head teachers representatives now for about a year, and they have an equal seat at the table in terms of oversight, decision making, and scrutiny. So this happening just strengthening what we already started putting in place. So it's just yet another building block to strengthen the participation. So it's all kind of going in the same direction.
Great, thank you.
Can I just talk
Yep, go for it. Julie.
In terms of education, having the locality-based model, we are hoping, we're seeing it, we saw it with our key working teams and they were locality-based, but we're hoping the family health teams that actually we have better relationships in those area clusters. So the service managers in those areas, they want them engaging with the schools, and so that schools aren't having a different person each time either. They're getting to know their locality social workers, their locality key workers and the leaders in that area. That makes communication, reaching out and learning easier. And there are cluster groups that have been going on for some time in the early health sphere that we're just trying to build into the family health too. So it's at each level, that very operational on the ground community level, right up to, as Alex said, at the ELG.
Okay, great, thank you. Taz? Yeah. Sorry, Taz.
Can I just quickly add in that? In terms of the way that we used to run previously was through a MASH, and a lot of those MASH workers hadn't been out to see families, hadn't done home visits, and actually made decisions based on what was coming in. We talked about impact, and I think the real impact is you've got people in the hub who do go out, really know their areas, know the families, and I think it's also about stigma. And the stigma that's moved away from having statutory social work involvement and really progressing on and encouraging that voluntary work as well. And I just want to go back to just a point about our partners. Now, there's no blueprint, and every local authority is doing it differently, but I have to say that all the partners that have been around tables, although they've been able to confirm how they can progress with it, especially with the police, as Helen has kind of referred to, they've still been on board, they're still, they want to make a difference. So what we're seeing is that everybody is really proactive and really positive about this, but there are some challenges, and I think with anything of this sort, there will always be challenges in terms of bringing the service along with you as well. Change brings some anxiety, but we are working through that, and we will continue to review it and monitor it, because we do have a vision in place and it seems to be going through the direction that we want it to, but we also know that sometimes in theory the vision doesn't work out in practice, so we will be reviewing that as well as we go on.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring to page 22 of the actual report, I think it's page 68 of the thing, it talks about listening and involving young people in decisions about their lives, and a few of the bullet points are, because you couldn't put everything in here, otherwise it'd be 500 pages long, are a little bit vague. So I just wondered if you could talk through 2 or 3 of the bullet points, just to talk through how the young people are able to help make decisions about their lives in the very moment, but also how how this will continue to skill them to be able to make decisions in the future. And then also I'll do a Mr. Little and ask two sort of related questions. Could you just talk a little bit around the personal development and the training of the staff in what is sort of like a step change, not maybe in the way they do things, but a change in the culture of which they do things, I think is what I'm hearing. And actually, sometimes it's easier to train people to change a way they're doing something than it is to train a different culture, and how we're taking people with us on that journey, doing things in a way that maybe they've been doing things for so long that is sometimes harder than actually telling something to do something differently, if that makes sense. Thank you very much, Helen.
Absolutely. So in respect of young people's involvement and family group decision making, which I think is the bullet points that you're referring to, so family group decision making is a new phrase that's been introduced, but is not a new concept. Involving children and families in the decisions that we make is really key. And on a day-to-day basis, that's absolutely what we're doing. At the point that, mum's really struggling, we might be phoning granny, it might be the next door neighbours that's come into a meeting with them. We're doing that on a day-to-day basis very much as part of the work that we do. We know that, and it's interesting that the Family First Partnership has used the phrase of family group decision making, because actually what we're really thinking about is support networks around children and families, and sometimes that's professionals, sometimes that's neighbours, sometimes that's friends, etc., etc. So the family group decision making really underpins all of the work that we're doing. It means that we need to be really mindful about involving parents, involving networks of people around our children and families right from the beginning. The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill makes it mandatory at pre-proceeding stage, but actually we need to be doing that right from the beginning. So there's a lot of consultation going on at the moment within Hillingdon around what that looks like and how we deliver that. We've currently got an external commission service that provides family group conferencing, which is essentially family group decision making within a set model, and whether or not we keep that, what that looks like. But ultimately, we've always worked hard to include the children and the networks around our children, and we need to continue to do that and continue to embed that. There's been various pieces of research that have been released around engagement of fathers in particular, and we know that we need to be really mindful about that. That's something that we're very proactively doing. It's something that we've done a lot of training on. We've talked about particularly post-COVID. So I'm confident that we've already got a really good foundation for that already across our workforce, and that we'll continue to embed that right from the point of the front door. So that piece around the Stronger Families Hub, and actually our practitioners that are going out, that are seeing children that would potentially be undertaking that assessment if it moved to assessment, are having those conversations at the point that the contact's coming into us, rather than waiting till we're further down the line. In respect of training, can't really train a culture change, can you? We've done a lot of work. We invested in trauma-informed practice over the last 2 years, not just for our social care staff, but also our education and SEND staff, because that really underpins what we do. It underpins the language that we use when we work with children and families. Bringing people along the way can be challenging. Some of these changes are mandated. They're DFE mandated changes. We continue to communicate, send out regular communications, make sure there's team meetings, there's service meetings. We have supported, one of the things I mentioned in my report was around a skills audit, particularly for our non-social work qualified staff. And that's not necessarily around kind of then delivering commission training. It's about supporting that understanding through conversations, through supervision, through team meetings, etc., etc. So we're continuing to have a training offer. We are also leaning on the expertise that we have in our service to support others through this journey.
Great. Councillor Sweeting.
I'm coming back to finance, I'm afraid. The report says there's no financial implications to this, but obviously there is a huge amount of change and work that's needed. And I believe last time when we had this report, we were told about the grant, the Department for Education grant, and I think there was issues about it not being sufficient. So we are not saying any financial implications to the council. We're saying the grant is not sufficient. So what are we doing to bridge the gap? Or is there a funding gap?
Or do you want to take it, Tav? I think from my point of view, any grant is when we're in a position where we've been underfunded for so long and the pressures are so high, no grant's likely to be sufficient. But in realistic terms, the grant has enabled us to employ the additional capacity to do the things that we need to do, and that's also for our partners as well. We have funded and are going to be funding some of their transformation support as well, and that's the purpose of the grant. The purpose of the grant wasn't to replace anything that we currently do, and actually it's quite explicit in the terms that it is additional to. So whilst it will never be enough, it's more than we had before, of which we are quite grateful for, and we've been able to use that as a lever. And now we know what we're getting for the next 3 years. That's really helping our planning moving forward for the programme. I don't know if Taz wants, because the budget and the grant sits with Taz, and she's the one that has a grip on that and monitors it very, very closely.
Taz, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
That is so 2020, I do apologise, but I just wanted to add on to the point that Julie's made in regards to our service delivery model and the changes that we've made. We have only had a seven headcount loss, but we're looking at a different way of working and delivering the service altogether, and we've obviously removed some of that duplication as well. So I wouldn't say that it's not enough. I think it's given us the opportunity to try and test different ways of working, and as I alluded to previously, we will look at reviewing that. We are looking at other ways of working. I know Helen's kind of mentioned some of those with the family group decision making as well. So what I would say is it's enhanced the working in terms of that service delivery model, and it's given us the opportunity to try and test things that we may not have been able to. We have supported our health colleagues and we will have somebody in the hub relatively soon, and we are looking at obviously through our transformation groups to see what other support is needed. And we did go off with a particular service delivery model, and after reviewing it after 3 or 4 months, we found that there were some gaps and we needed to mitigate those gaps, and that grant's been really useful to mitigate some of those gaps. So we will continue, it's work in progress, we'll continue to review it, because it is some of the work that we are doing is a pilot. For example, the New Beginnings, very small team, but we can see the impact already, and we can see obviously, and we can look at how we can expand that moving forward, and that grant allows us to do that.
So where are the teams geographically? Are they in our hubs? Are they in the civic? I mean, I'm looking at ensuring that there is parity. Can you assure me of that with this initiative?
So the teams geographically sit in the civic, so that's their main point. However, they're aligned with their areas, within different areas. So they're aligned. So for example, we've got the Uxbridge Hub, sits with below the civic. They're aligned into that area, but the actual where they work from and where their work base is in the civic. But what we expect from our workforce is that they're in the community, working with the families. So they will be out there delivering that work, because really it is face-to-face work and delivering it with families, and that's where the majority of the workforce will, that's where you'll find them.
Just to add to that, in terms of
the point is we use data to decide how many teams and how many places. And we mirror the stronger families locality. So there's south east, south west, and there's north. We have teams of 4 teams in each of the south areas, because we know that's where demand is greater, it's more populated, we have more children and families that need support, and we have 3 teams that cover the north. That doesn't mean that will stay like that forever. We will continue to look at the data and the demand, so it gives us a bit of flexibility to move people if needed. But yeah, the base, if they're having to come for a team meeting or a supervision, they'll be having that in the civic. But ideally they're in the community. They should be in our family hubs and families' homes, in their schools and in their libraries. And that was a bit about the locality model. where they're not going from, Heathrow villages to Harefield every day. They have a patch, they have an area, and they build those relationships and really understand the communities that they're serving, because we have a range of different communities across the borough. It's a big borough, and that gives us that sort of enhanced understanding. And they spend some of the time in the hub where they are then advising families or schools or whoever phones up that needs a bit of support for a family. They're well aware of the resources that are in their area rather than just relying on the directory. But it's still quite new, and if we find gaps, we'll fill them, and if we find something doesn't add value, we'll change it, and if something does, then we'll look at any business case to scale up or expand it. They're very exciting, and the teams have been working really, really hard, and Helen's been doing a great job for us.
Just as a comment, I think it shows that the teams are enthusiastic and you have been working hard, so many thanks.
Alex, did you want to add anything? Or is it fine? Done. Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Great, okay, so recommendation is to note the key developments and findings. So do we agree with that? Great, thank you. Thank you, Helen. You are free to go. We move on then to agenda item 9, which is the proposed changes to the PAN Field End Infant School. Just to also mention that this school is in my ward. But who am I passing out? Okay. Thank you, Laura.
That's okay. Yes, so the paper is in regards to the proposed reduction of Field End Infant School from a 3-4 elementary school to a 2-4 elementary school from September to 2027. If anyone's got any questions.
Great. Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Laura. I just wanted to get a bit more of a broader picture about sort of the why this is happening, and in particular I just wanted to distinguish whether this is a Hillingdon problem or a sort of a London-wide problem or etc. So I was just hoping if you could just sort of reflect on how much this kind of reflects broader national trends as opposed to sort of borough-specific issues.
Yeah, so it's quite national, and London have been impacted, I think, quite significantly. A lot of London boroughs are closing schools, and we're not in that position at the moment. So we are working closely with all of our schools and meeting regularly with schools that are reaching out to us, or ones that we are identifying where we're noticing a reduction in the numbers on their roles, or children that are starting in reception or moving up in Year 7, for example. So this has come from conversations that we've had with the school over the last year and monitoring their numbers, and in order to support them and continue with them being financially viable, this is in order to support that. And we're having ongoing conversations with other schools. So there's a number of other schools that are also proposing to reduce their PAN as well, and they're schools that we've also had conversations with over the last year and are in support of those proposals as well.
Chair, I'd be very happy to support the recommendation based on what I've heard. Given that we're basically most working people are being squeezed left, right, and centre by the government, it's only fair that a lot of people, and there's an ongoing trend that people can't afford to have children, it's only reasonable that the council also decides to work the best way they can. And so, given all of that, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Laura, for that. I just wanted to. There was quite a low. The consultation had very few people reply to it, and actually, if I'm correct, of the 4, only 1 were parents at the infant school itself. Is that a usual trend for something like this? Did we get sort of a feel for what parents were thinking away from the sort of formal consultation documents? Did the school sort of, mums at the school gate sort of chitter-chatter rather than sort of needing to fill out a boring form type feedback?
Thank you. I think it was shared with schools prior to the breakup of the summer holidays, so they'd had conversations and they put it in newsletters and shared it with all of their the parents of both the infant school and the junior school done the same. So there probably was some feedback that was given more verbal to the school in regards to this, but in relation to the feedback that we've received, that was all we had formally. But the links to that would have been shared by the school to parents and other schools as well. So there would have been the opportunity to formally respond.
Okay, Councillor Smallwood, yeah.
Just in terms of, obviously, this is, I'm just sort of Mystic Meg predicting the future type stuff here. If an infant school pans down, there's usually something that then happens at the junior school that will probably have an impact there. What conversations are we having with the junior school with that potential? Because obviously, you know, not exact science, but if you go to the infant school, you'd end up in the junior school.
Yeah, so we've actually been working closely with both of the schools. So following, I think it was the junior school that reached out to us in the first instance to say they were looking to reduce their PAN, and we'd already been having conversations with the infant school anyway, so it made sense to do them at the same time. And then that way that will follow on through. So both parents in both schools have been consulted with and made aware. And just to expand on that, if things, I mean it's mentioned in the report, but if things change in future years and there is then a reversal, there's then a demand, they've got the capacity within the school to then open extra classes. I will have that open dialogue. So if there's a particular year that there is an influx of children, we can then approach them schools and say, would you be willing to take an extra class if it was that year, or for a permanent increase if needed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
It's just for clarification, actually. We've had reductions in pupil numbers in London, in the country, over the last 5 years. It's not been since the last 18 months. We know that because Ricewick Gardens and other schools...
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, if I can clarify, I did not say that.
All right, guys, thank you. Can we focus on the actual agenda item? Any other questions or comments to make? No? Great. Okay, so what we need to do is provide comments to be included in the Cabinet report, and again I will be delegating the comments to the Democratic Services Officer in conjunction with myself and the Opposition Lead. Thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 10, which is lowering the age range of Whiteheath Infant and Nursery School. Is that Catherine? Yeah, great, thank you.
So you've all had the paper which proposes to lower the age range of Whiteheath Infant School and Nursery. From currently it's 3 to 11, the proposal is to reduce it to age 2, and this is largely off the back of the expansion of the early years provision, which has been championed by the government, and particularly will benefit children from disadvantaged backgrounds and also children from working families. It sits within the Ricewick ward, where we know that currently there is a lack of range of provision for early years, and you can see that through the figures within the paper. So it's open to questions if anybody has any.
Mr. Little.
The report is very clear, and I just wanted to ask, in relation to any other schools in the borough, are there any other schools which do provide for 2-year-olds? And how have we found the experience of the children using it? And would that reassure the parents who have concern about 2 being too young?
The only other school that we're aware of that offers it is Minette, so they currently offer it to 2-year-olds. We've had no complaints from parents or any concerns that their provision isn't suitable once they've lowered their age range, so we can certainly look at that and use them almost as a good practice model to share with Whiteheath parents so that they can sort of dispel any myths or issues they may have about the issue of younger children going. We've only ever had positive comments from parents that it helps to facilitate things like school drop-offs. If they have older siblings who attend the school, it makes those sorts of things much easier for them. So overall, the benefits seem to definitely outweigh the potential negatives.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chair, and just forgive me, I haven't quite found the page that I was on yet, but I'll ask the question anyway. So when I was reading this earlier, and forgive me if I'm wrong, or if it's the wrong page, or if I've interpreted it slightly wrong, but there was in the consultation there was a difference between the range of views offered by parents and the providers. So I was just wondering if we could explain or clarify how that's kind of being weighted in the approach, because if we were just looking at the parents, I think it was quite a large number, I think like 75-ish%. If again, I can't find the page in front of me. There's a 73. Yeah, thank you. And once Fridays was kind of bought in, it was levelled out to almost, again, not using the explicit number because I can't find it in front of me, but almost an even, roughly even half, or a lot closer. Here we go. Yeah, 43 and 53%. That's on page 119. If we could get a bit of clarity on that, that would be useful, please. Sorry, the last part was just if we can get a bit of clarity about how it's weighted, how the consultation is weighted, in how our approaches weights the consultation, if that makes sense.
As in the importance of the views of the parents versus the views of the providers.
Yes.
For us, it would be equally weighted. Everybody.
Obviously, sorry, Chair, if I may. Obviously, there's quite a bit of difficulty with that, especially when they have sort of differing views on the matter. And I'm just wondering how you navigate some of the more difficult disparities, let's say.
I think it's helping everybody to understand the overall benefits of the proposal. What we're proposing actually will benefit lots of families, but in terms of the ward itself, it's a relatively small number of the proportion of children that live in the borough. So I think some of the concerns that other providers have is that it's additional competition for them, and that it might mean that a parent or a family may choose to send their child to Whiteheath rather than choosing a private childminder, for example, or a different type of nursery setting. That's not what this is about at all. It's just about providing a range of offers for our parents and families to consider, so that they can really look at what's best that meets their needs. Is it something that's just term time only, or something that's throughout the year for 365 days? We don't currently have as much of that in the Riceless ward that we would need to have, and you can see that through the figures. So it's a lot of the work that our early years team and also the early years quality improvement team are doing is helping those other providers to see that bigger picture.
Okay, Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I remind the committee of my declaration as a governor of the school, and I didn't pick this up at governing body either. I just wanted to understand why the range was 3 to 11, 2 to 11, when it's an infant school. So none of the children in the school are 11. Very small 11-year-olds. Is that a typo?
We've looked at it as the whole of Whiteheath.
Okay, you looked at it at whole of Whiteheath. No, I wasn't an attempt to be smart or pick you out. It was just whether you actually did look at it in the wider setting of. I know the two schools are different, but yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this item? No? Great. Okay, so again, on this one, we need to provide comments to Cabinet. So again, we will delegate comments to Democratic Service Officer Ryan, and in conjunction with myself and Opposition Lead. Great. Okay, so then we move on to our agenda item 11, fostering review. If anyone needs to drop off, there she's gone. That was very quick. I was just going to say, please feel free to do so. Okay, so here we are, agenda item 11, fostering review. I'll just, before we discuss anything on this agenda item, just to remind members that some of our witness sessions were conducted in private, so please be mindful when you are sharing comments or making any kind of draft recommendations. Maybe if I just start off with just some of the things that I've picked out, and please do all contribute your ideas as well. So obviously we had 3 witness sessions. The first one was with the officers. We had a witness session with our young people and with our foster carers. So just want to thank everybody who's participated for giving up their time as well and being very candid and transparent in their views, especially our young people, which is great because we need to hear that, you know, exactly what they're experiencing and kind of what they would recommend we do. So some of the key points or themes that seemed to come across in all three witness sessions, in fact, was things to do with stronger communication and information sharing was one of the things. By that we mean that not only just the information sharing between our social workers and officer teams, but also with our young people. They felt at times that they were maybe kept in the dark about certain things, why decisions were being made, such as one young person shared why, you know, coming into care, for instance. So I guess it's just something to consider around if it's safe and appropriate to do so, can we maybe be a bit more inclusive with our information sharing. We discussed, or one of the themes, that came up was about the matching process. Maybe some more consideration needs to be given and careful consideration around the matching process to see whether it's a cultural match, whether it's around also just thinking about who else is in the household, other young people who are in the household, and that cared for experience or cared for child, coming into that household, whether it is suitable, because we heard some examples of where maybe it wasn't quite appropriate to have that particular child join that household. So it's just something to be given careful consideration. Another area was to think about developing a buddy system or a mentoring system. Now, this is something, when I was on the panel, a fostering panel a while back, we did talk about this, so I thought it was something that was taking place, but then we've discovered through our witness session that actually perhaps it's not. So this would be really beneficial to our foster carers, so they know that they have someone that they can turn to for advice, guidance, support, maybe also to just a vent as well if they're having a bit of a difficult experience or a challenge. The other point is around recruitment, maybe developing some kind of specialist recruitment. We heard in one of the sessions that it would be really ideal that these foster carers, some of them bring such fantastic transferable skills in the careers that they are involved in or have been involved in. So can we use some of those skills or that experience in kind of making them more specialist carers when we're thinking about certain young people and maybe their needs. So I think one other thing that I would just probably add is around family contact as well. I think this was just something that I just picked up, and I thought the question we need to be asking is family contact always within the best interests of the young person? Because, just some of the things that we heard were just kind of unsure about that, so maybe officers can look at that particular area and just kind of give it some thought. I think that's kind of covered some of the key themes that I've picked out. Please feel free to contribute. Councillor Gohill.
Thanks, Chair. I think that's quite, first of all, I think it's quite a comprehensive list. Covered a lot of what I would have initially said. If I could suggest one and then also make some clarity on one of the things that you said. So the one I might want to add on to there is training. So that's one of the things that I think on both sides of the witness session we were asked for. So, foster carers were asked for more training, and the children those who had some complex needs, asked for would have liked for their carers to be a bit more trained. So I think it's one of the things that we identify. So something along the lines of that would be really useful. And then just within your first point, you mentioned communication, and I just think that it's such I don't quite know how to split that up because it's such a big area that we'd like to focus on. But if we can just maybe include a kind of, I've written down the word starter pack here, but maybe a best start pack or something for the children, something for the kids basically, so they can keep kind of information with them, regardless of their circumstances, if they move, etc. So something where they can just look for and not have to maybe Google or find other ways. So just kind of give them a best start package, and maybe if we can include that within our kind of council comms, just to help everyone get the best outcome.
Yeah, so just on that one, I just wanted to clarify. So are you asking for or suggesting some kind of document that the young person keeps with them? So
something like that. Yeah, I haven't quite fleshed it out, but obviously not anything too long when no one will read it.
Yeah. So I think, Alex, you might need to come in here, but is it about life story work? Is that kind of what we're talking about here? Oh.
Thank you. I think there's a lot to unpack in there about communication, about how the young people are aware of the process, understand the process, understand what they become, cared for, and everything else. In terms of something that they take with them, what they should have, and they always kind of, hope that they now have, is their plan, because they're all going to have a plan. They will know what's in the plan. They will know who's involved. They will know what the expectations are around how they meet the need. They should have a good understanding of what the long-term plan is as well. And they do have access to advocacy services, which is, quite often it's independent from the local authority, so they have an advocate that doesn't have anything to do with us per se, and they can ask questions. They can be represented by them in various meetings, and their views can be heard. Also, they have an independent reviewing officer who should be hearing them. So there is quite a lot, but it's really important, it's really meaningful to hear that, some of the young people we've spoken to feel that that needs to be done even better. I think that the building blocks are there, no doubt about it. It's just about how do we ensure through the foster carers themselves quite often that the young people have their plans, but also that they understand the plans, they speak the language, that is something that they can pick up and say, oh, I know what this means, and I know what this means to me, to my life. Absolutely, that's really good.
Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think there's some good ideas floating around, but what resonated with me as well was, yes, I agree with the mentoring scheme, but I think that also perhaps even looking at alumni kind of network of different foster carers and how they can support each other, to create that sort of networking. I think, matching also resonates with me, but what really kind of hit a chord last time was when we interviewed the children was the fact that some siblings were separated, and how can considerations be made for siblings that don't get to see each other. And it was quite surprising, actually. I was quite surprised by that, and also general behaviour management type issues. How foster carers can deal with that. Also noted that social care workers were being changed quite consistently, and how can we improve that selection of social care workers and that kind of thing. Then I had an idea about promoting sort of foster caring, like workshops, roadshows, examples of testimonials from existing carers. I had a look at the Hillingdon our.gov website. It's okay, but I think it needs to be a bit more dynamic. It needs to be more out there, a lot more social media stuff. And I think that's just going to help recruitment. And we know that videos are quite powerful, so stories sell, right? And yeah, resonate with Councillor Gohal. The starter pack's a great idea. It's also a really good reference point, and within that you can perhaps put in key contacts, especially with sort of external organisations.
Okay, Councillor Sweeting.
Well, there was 18 pages of minutes, and I went through them, and there were so many things that have come up that councillors opposite have sort of mentioned. One of the first issues was the officers were trying to widen ethnicity and religious pool of carers, and I was wondering whether that information on fostering could go into our churches and places of worship to try to get those connections going. I've sort of highlighted several things at the top of this, saying training, definitely, because there seems to be a disconnect between what officers were saying that they were producing and what some of the information that was coming from the witness session. I mean, trauma-based training and maybe some much more detailed training in certain aspects to accommodate various needs of our young people. All I can say is I don't know whether I can share this page with all of my bits and pieces here, or whether you would like me just to type them out as bullet points, because there's so many that you've already covered, but there are a few that may be of use.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful if you're able to just maybe share that document or bullet point it, whatever you prefer. That would be really helpful, and we can kind of draft something together, I guess.
Thank you.
Mr. Little, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I thought your summary was very good and covered most of the points that I'd jotted down to raise, and it seems from the other comments around that we've got consensus on most of those points. There was one point of emphasis I think I wanted to make in relation to the information sharing point that's been made, and the impression I gained from what I heard with the carers we had here and what I read about the children or ex-children who witnessed, and I'm afraid I missed, and that was my carelessness principally, so I apologise for that, was a sense that I picked up that there was some sugar-coating going on to encourage people to do the adoption, and then discovering that it's not quite as sweet as they anticipated. And again, on the kids' point, that they didn't know what they were getting, and that it wasn't always as suitable as they'd been led to believe it was going to be when they were encouraged. So it's I can understand the reasoning behind both sides of that, and the natural tendency that goes into it, but for the long-term success, that honesty needs to be there. And the other one that I picked up, I'd like to emphasise, it was in relation to the point made by Councillor Butt, that I too had a look at the council's website, and yeah, it's all kind of there, and there was the bit in Hillingdon People that I looked at tonight, but it isn't dynamic, and it isn't, it kind of oversells the ease of getting the job done. I mean, a process that's going to take the best part of a year or 6 months is obviously not an easy process. and they kept sort of saying, we'll guide you all the way, we'll guide you through this, we'll guide you. It will involve this. And that lengthy commitment doesn't come over, because I suspect it's seen as a discouragement. But as we all know, it's a vital necessity that we only have people who are going to be able to do the job and remain committed to do the job. So I understand the needs for the process. And those, I mean, I fully accept the points that you made in particular and have been endorsed by colleagues, but wanted to emphasise those.
Great, thank you. Alex, do you want to come on this point, or do you want to just kind of at the end? What would you say?
Will just something on this point, because I think just something about it to make sure that we are very clear in terms of the honesty of the message, because I think that's the point that I wanted to address. I think in terms of what we are saying about fostering and how we put fostering out there. I mean, members of this committee have looked online, and probably I'm sure you've seen all the videos, all the testimony from our foster carers about the journey, about what it meant to them, the difference they're making, which I think is quite powerful. But also, I would just say that there's never ever going to be any sort of trying to deceive anyone into applying for a job that we don't think they're going to do. And I think the amount of expression of interest we have is quite significant. The amount of people who move from expression of interest to actually going through an assessment is significantly reduced, because it has to be the right type of person in the right type of condition, the right type of home provision availability, and all that. And the process that we're doing, it's definitely a very difficult and very intrusive to a certain extent process, because that assessment that can take up to about 7-8 months, that looks into every single aspect of that person's life, their personal circumstance, their motivation, and their ability to undertake this role. Once that assessment is completed, that doesn't mean that that person then it's a foster carer. They will go to another level of scrutiny to the fostering panel, which has representation from the elected members as well, and also from a variety of other people. Once the panel makes a recommendation, it's still not at the point of that person becoming a foster carer. All the panel recommendation, the deliberation, they will come to the agency decision maker, which for the foster carers is myself, and I'll go to every single assessment, everything they've done, to give the final sign off to that person. So ideally we want to see the drop-off rate being quite low from people going through the assessment. They are the ones who are going to be finalising the process, but sometimes, unfortunately, that's not the case, because that assessment is filtering out everyone who's not in a good position to be a foster carer, and that is published everywhere. We're pretty clear about that. This session itself is a public session, and this is going to be available on YouTube. So this has never been any secret that this is our approach, and I think it's never a secret. We are committed to get the right people for our children, and we will absolutely support them along the way. That is our commitment. That's our role. But equally, we'll have to be very clear and to scrutinise very clearly who becomes a foster carer, because they are going to be looking after some of our most vulnerable children. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Smallwood.
Thanks, Chair. Just two quick points. One, around, I just felt, especially when we spoke to the foster carers, like some sort of informal networking was needed. I don't want to just say go to the pub, like have a pint or have a coffee, right? I just felt that would be quite good, a bit of respite for them, but just to chew the fat. It's a bit like being a counsellor sometimes, right? Sometimes someone should have a good old groan at you, and then they feel a whole lot better after they've had that good old groan, right? And sometimes sometimes you then got to, and a lot of the time you've got to go and solve some serious issues, but sometimes just actually spending a bit of time listening to each other. I'm sure we've all done it. So I just think that informal setting of just having an opportunity to talk to each other and just being able to get hold of someone is important. The other one is quite niche. I felt, and Councillor Sweeting's touched on it in her interesting point, which is a good one, about religious settings and ethnic minorities and getting more people in there. I didn't feel there was an emphasis on single people, and I didn't feel there was an emphasis on LGBTQ plus people, two really fast-going groups for families. For a long time, people who are ethnic minorities and people who go to religious settings have been having families throughout time. Not so much, unless tragic things happened for single people, and certainly not for LGBT plus QQ plus people. So I just thought there should be a little bit more of an emphasis on that. I'm not saying that should take it there, but I think it should be given equal weighting to those two other groups when placing into consideration, although obviously they're different in settings, etc., etc. But yeah, families are not one man and one woman anymore. They're all sorts of interesting people.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Little.
Yeah. Some of our experience with the witnesses were that they came from those groups, so they've got through anyway. But the point I wish to raise was, at the beginning we were promised some statistics, and we never actually got any. And I was wondering, from the points that were made by the children, whether we're sufficiently distinguishing in the statistics that are kept between those who are on respite care of one sort or another, which obviously are short-term placements, and those who have lots of placements because the placements don't work. But virtually all the child witnesses seem to imply that they had multiple placements. And as an ideal, it doesn't strike me as the right one. I mean, the right one ought to be that we get it right, or they get it right, and it all works out. And I know that's an impossibility, and breakdowns will happen. But we also, in our monitoring, need to distinguish between the two. And I presume you do, but we're not seeing the evidence.
Okay, I think that with the request for data, we'll have to look back, Ryan, in the minutes and just check with... yeah, we have that somewhere. Also, the other point, actually, just on that, Mr. Little, you've prompted me to think about something. I think during one of the witness sessions, did request to see a template of the About Me profile page. I thought it would be worthwhile for members of the select committees to also see that. So if, Alex, we can have something like that, if you share it with Ryan, he can circulate that. That would be great. Yeah, Mr. Little.
If you'll allow me an extra request, that there's been a lot of talk this evening in this area and in the previous one of trauma-informed. It's a new area for some of us. It'd be nice to have a pointer to some background reading or other information about it.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Garg?
Sorry, just briefly, just reminded me of something else that was mentioned in the witness sessions, was the respite issue as such. So maybe that's something else that we can look at.
Yep, Councillor Gohill?
Just two really quick things, if that's okay. One, off the back of what Councillor Smallwood said about the LGBTQ community, that was also mentioned. I don't know I can't remember if you were at the second witness session of the children, where it was mentioned on both sides, with adults and children as well. And I was wondering if we could maybe incorporate that either within the, because I'm conscious we're going to have a list of like 23 recommendations, and like, you know, we don't want it to be a huge list that isn't achievable, right? So I'm wondering if we can incorporate that both within the communication and maybe the mentoring objectives as well. And my second point was it was just one of the things that some of the children raised particularly, and it's one of the things that they found the most enriching, which was the I can't remember the phrase for it. It's the reward day, the day where all of them get together and dress up. Yeah, that one. I was wondering if we can explore other opportunities other enrichment opportunities for them, and so maybe a day where they're invited to the Mayor's Parlour might be quite nice, something they could do at the Civic, for example. And yeah, just maybe small things like that, which we can add on, which might have a bit of a tangible effect, but not really huge impact maybe on the teams, because we can kind of do it internally.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before I pass to Alex? No. Okay, Alex.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much for taking the time, for the focus, and for looking into this area and speaking to ourselves and our young people in foster care. Quite a few of the recommendations really good to hear. I think it's worth recognizing that we are on a journey in terms of fostering. We did launch our new fostering offer, new fostering approach more than a year ago. We start to see the numbers increasing. We start to see more people coming through. Absolute valid points about focus on recruiting various specialisms, using people's knowledge, ambitions and willingness in terms of different areas of fostering. Absolutely agree about gender, about single parents, about sexual orientation, religion, all those things absolutely make perfect sense. And we are doing quite a lot towards that, but I will respond to that once I have a formal recommendations, which is really good. Very interesting and very welcome as well to hear about the point about network of support, formal or less formal. We did run a pilot in Hillingdon. It's the Mockingbird pilot, and we had some central government funding to run that. We learned quite a lot from it. We are now in a position where we stopped. Basically, we ended the pilot. We reviewed the findings, and we are looking at relaunching a slightly altered version of that very soon. But that will provide a sort of galaxy of foster carers who support one another. That will also have the added benefit of providing some of the respite that I think someone mentioned in terms of within that galaxy. The idea of that being pretty much, if you think about an extended family of foster carers. So they support each other, know each other, children know each other, they meet together with the children, so all that is happening. But it's really good to know that that's what is needed, because that's what we are looking at doing. And there are quite a few others really good recommendations, and I think once we have them all together, we'll do like a formal response to them. I'm really apologise if there's any information that the committee has asked for, hasn't received. Anything there is, through yourself, Chair, or Ryan, if you send me whatever is needed, and I'll make sure you get that information. And yeah, just to say thank you very much, and really pleased to have been part of this, and thank you for your recommendation. Looking forward to the final report.
Great, thank you very much. Taz, Julie, thank you very much as well. And we need to then put the draft recommendations together, and I guess we'll take that offline, and you can just share that. That'll be great. Thank you so much. Okay, so agenda item. Thank you, Alex. Agenda item 12 is the minutes of the corporate parenting panel. Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 13 is a forward plan. Agreed. And then we move to sorry, Taz, Julie. Thank you for sharing that, both Julie and Taz. I think that, Ryan, if you can just take that offline, and then we can just get that clarified at the next corporate parenting panel meeting. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you very much, and thank you for accommodating online link. We look forward to seeing you in person next time. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Okay, so agenda item 14 is the work programme. Any questions, comments? Great. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. That's all of us on the screen. Looks great. Thank you so much for all your contributions. I know it's been a bit of a long meeting, but we got through quite a lot, so thank you, much appreciated. The next meeting is on the 5th of February, so look forward to seeing you again then, and safe journey home. Thank you.